Yeah, before I move into this, I want to dwell a little bit about the previous topic on cultivating love and compassion, eventually deepening that into bodhicitta practice. Usually, generally, there are two main methods, two main lineages of instruction in cultivating bodhicitta. One is called the 7-point cause and effect instruction, and another is called equalizing self and others and exchanging self for others. Many of you may be already familiar with that, but I wonder if there may be some who are new to this, just so that you know. In the 7-point cause and effect instruction, the effect part is the seventh one. The seventh is the bodhicitta. So we are speaking here of how to generate bodhicitta. So in the 7-point cause and effect instruction, the seventh is the effect. That's bodhicitta. And the remaining first 6 are the causes. Where the first is recognizing all other sentient beings having been one's mother. Not as one's mother, but having been one's mother. One is your mother. One is your mother, and others have been, including the one of this life, have been your mother countless times. So, recognizing others having been one's mother for several times, for numerous times, innumerable times. And the second is recalling their kindness during those times. The third is repaying their kindness, which is making the mind to repay their kindness. And then, after having seen them kind, connected in that way, and having seen them kind in so many ways, to the extent of even sacrificing their lives, then you develop a sense of endearment towards them. That's called endearing love. Kind of a sense of attractiveness towards them, no matter what their conditions may be, whatever, because of the awareness of the kindness that you have been indebted to, you develop a sense of endearment towards them, so that no matter what, you are kind of feeling the closeness towards them. With that as a basis, then when you see them suffering, you would naturally develop a wish for them to be relieved of the suffering. And when you find them joyful or bereft of joyful that you wish for them to have, then you develop love or loving kindness. So loving kindness and compassion come together in the fifth, right? Fifth. I wish I had a slide here. Okay, we talked a lot about abstract, so this is abstract. So, recognizing all sentient beings having been your mother numerous times, and on those occasions they have been very kind to you, to the extent of sacrificing their lives, everything, their time, energy, health, everything. And then you, by remembering their kindness, you develop a sense of natural sense of repaying their kindness. And based on that, you develop a sense of endearment towards them. Like no matter what their conditions are, you're developing a sense of closeness, being kind of they look very endearing to you, right? Attractive, appealing to you. Based on that connection, then when you see them suffering, you naturally wish them to be freed from suffering. When you see them to be joyful or bereft of joyful, and then you wish them to be joyful, regain the joyful, or continue to be joyful. So that's loving kindness or compassion, the fifth. The sixth is then you resolve. That's called the special resolve. You don't merely sit there with the compassionate wish or the joyful wish. Rather, you then evolve further in the strength of your compassion and then resolve to do something. Like, I must do, I will do something. Whatever that happens to be, whatever that something happens to be. Then in the course of really sincerely figuring out what could be done to relieve, to repay their kindness and relieve their suffering, and kind of find them in a place of lasting happiness, then you find that the only way I could be of thorough, full benefit, like on my part, nothing lacking, be that love, compassion, wisdom, tolerance, etc., understanding, everything on my part, lacking nothing of that, so that at least I myself would be fully equipped, nothing wanting, nothing lacking in being of benefit to them. That too, benefit in the truest sense of kind of relieving them from the suffering once forever. So that would be, and in the course of wondering about that, then you see that yes, that's the state of full awakening that I have the potential for, yet not yet capable, but that I have the potential for, that I should work for that. So you develop an aspiration to full awakening, to Buddhahood. Of course, one has to work on understanding how Buddhahood is possible based on one's condition. So that involves looking deep into the nature of mind. What is mind? How do the defilements fit with the general schema of the mental world, workings of mind, and etc. So you have to kind of dwell on the nature of mind at different levels of understanding, eventually understanding its being clear light in nature, clear light in the nature that however strong store of negativities, defilements you may have, these are all adventitious, temporary, not necessarily in the sense that they will go away on their own, but temporary in the sense that they are there, removable, provided one makes effort, that they do not enter into the fabric of the mind. I mean, as thick as they may be, they are like the clouds that may be overcasting the sky, but never ever becoming part of the fabric of the sky. In that, every time one succeeds in exceeding, one could always see the sky being completely blue with none of the clouds kind of ever having, ever having made their way into the fabric of the sky, so that now they cannot be separated from. That's not the case. So there's different ways of looking at it, and basically what one is getting to is understanding what we call Buddha nature. Of course, Buddha nature is dealt with at different stages of understanding, building on the previous one, and then eventually understanding Buddha nature in the form of the subtlest nature of mind, the subtlest connotation of its being clear light. So based on that, one develops a sense of the possibility. Of course, on the one hand, one looks at the nature of defilements, how they are, what the scriptures say, how do they match with one's own experience, so, etc. So based on this, one develops a sense of the possibility of not just addressing the question of defilements, but even succeeding in uprooting them. And how, on the other hand, realizations like compassion, understanding, wisdom, love, tolerance, etc., can be progressively built on a very solid, valid basis. And how, given the fact that defilements, no matter how strong they may be, lack a stable basis, whereas the positivities, no matter how feeble they may be at the point of time, they still have the backing of a valid cognition, have a backing of a valid grounding. And based on that, one develops this understanding of the possibility of cultivating them progressively. One way of getting some understanding that this is possible is looking around, see in the history of our world, how many different people have walked on this world, on this globe, and how different are their potentials, mental potentials. In some cases, from their writings and their works, I mean, it's amazing how much can they understand, can they what do you call hold, and how they can be, how the truth of them can be borne out through experiences, through reasoning, etc., etc. So from those clues, at least one could get some idea that yes, there are room for improvement. Like that. So basically, this understanding of the possibility, one, of liberation or freedom from the clutches of afflictions, and other, of further developing it into full awakening, is based on a very systematic, thorough understanding of the what we call Buddha nature, Buddha potential, mainly based on knowing the nature of mind. So based on that, then one would be even further equipped to have a kind of a strong reasoning, understanding-backed aspiration for bodhicitta, or else at least one would have to put up with a kind of a belief, faith, primarily belief, faith, or aspiration, emotion, kind of driven, what do you call, wish for awakening, and then eventually working one's way in kind of getting more strength in that aspiration. So that's one aspect, which involves taking into consideration the possibility of rebirth. That too, from a beginningless time, big time. Yes. So what I was saying is that kind of a pursuit of developing bodhicitta involves taking into consideration the possibility not just of a beginningless time, but of rebirth, the working of karma across life. In our life, we can see how karma, in a way of action, result works, right? Even if that be very secretive action of how you think, you bear the result. People may or may not understand, but sometimes if it is very pronounced action that you have done, it will have its effect on oneself. It will have its effect on others, but definitely on oneself, right? So there is this connection between your action and the result you bear. And that action doesn't necessarily have to be apparent, clear out there for everyone to see and witness. It could be very secretive action that one may have within mind, but one would definitely suffer the consequences or undergo the effects of it. And then we say that that's possible even across life. One way of making case for that is how we begin our life with no clear understanding, conscious awareness of having made any choice or whatnot. We find ourselves born here, and then born with very peculiar conditions that can stay with us for the whole life and then impact us. And not necessarily in the sense that we have to suffer from that, but somehow we have to bear the impact of it and have to deal with it. Just that itself is very indicative of how there could be something connected with what one might have done, that one has to undergo that. So that takes into account consideration the possibility of rebirth like that, and based on that, one uses the strongest image of love and compassion in the form of mother. But that's not limiting to merely seeing people, others having been your mother. One could then extend to having been your brother, sister, spouses, teachers, everything. infinitely. So whatever image is very endearing to oneself in this life, one could see others having been in that same image several times in past life. It doesn't necessarily have to be confined to my mother. So, right, that's very important to understand. Now this other one, the other instruction is called equalizing self and others and exchanging self for others. Equalizing and exchanging self and others. That doesn't directly involve considering the fact of rebirth, and not even so clearly the karma, the working of karma across life, but rather kind of thinking about our connection with others in this very life, by first seeing others and oneself as being equal. Equal, not just, usually we say we are equal in terms of being wanting happiness, not wanting suffering, no difference in there. And then the other ways of equality is that everyone is equally in need of support, help. Everyone is equally in want of joy and happiness, equally in want of support, equally what you call subject to sufferings, etc. So from others' point of view, we are all equal. Say suppose I'm considering how others how we are equal. So looking at it from others' point of view, we are all equal in that we all want happiness, we all want suffering. We are all equal in that we are all in need of support, help, direction, and that we all aspire for support, etc. Likewise, we can look at others, the equality from one's own side, like everyone, for me, has been kind, will be kind, has and is kind to me. So there's no one particular person that you could single out saying, "Oh, I have nothing whatsoever to do with that." We did an experiment during a workshop on what we are now calling compassion-based ethics, or we're calling it social, emotional, and ethical learning in education. Social, emotional is already there. Cell, right? Social, emotional learning is already there. Now we're adding to it the component of ethics. Social, emotional, and ethical learning in education. So not calling that secular ethics anymore because of unnecessary, misunderstanding and energy wasted in explaining in the first place why. So we could get rid of that. So anyway, in the workshop, what we did was we had people team up, and then say, just think of just one single thing, and we would have put out a big white paper with sketch pens available for everyone, different color. And so you just draw one thing in the middle. So somebody, in my group, we drew tea bag. We drew a tea bag, single tea bag. Someone was very expert in really drawing it. It looked real like a tea bag. And then each one held a pen in their hand. And then we drew kind of a line to us. Every time we remember, how do we get it, through whom, how many are involved, right? Who are involved? So we try to guess how many number of people may be involved. And it ended up into millions within 4 or 5 minutes. Because the connection goes like, that person did it, that person is the son of that person. He wouldn't be there without them. Not only without them, but he could have been groomed, educated, trained, whatnot through him. And must have had support from a friend. So doing that, you cannot leave out anyone. Sometimes, then you can even include animals also. As much as we think that, and human beings can just get by themselves. No. We depend as much on so many So many sentient beings, right? Directly, indirectly. So, so thinking along those lines, I mean, it's amazing how inextricably we are connected and how indebted we are to each other. So here in this system, in this instruction, we roughly, yeah, I mean, here we speak of maybe 6 steps. The first is equalizing self and others, seeing others and oneself as equal, and there too equal not just on the basis of basic aspiration, but equal in the sense that we are equally in need of support, help, etc. And then from one side, one has equally benefited from others, irrespective, uh, and that any kind of biases in terms of attending or responding to the needs of others, unless one has other principles, other reasons to direct that on the ground of urgency, responsibility, duty, etc. Everyone equally deserves one's attention, one's support, at least one's good will, etc. So, on so many accounts, we are equal. From a Buddhist perspective, we are equally fortunate to have Buddha nature. Everyone is equally deserving of respect, admiration, and we cannot tell who would go first and become Buddha. Who knows? We could be just what do you call doing the rabbit and tortoise race. So we can't look down upon the tortoise. Say, I think no. Everyone has the Buddha nature, and that means everyone not only carries the potential to be as caring in such a meaningful, significant way, but could actually be acting on that and then be unknowingly, without you unknowing, could be directly or indirectly be very significantly affecting oneself. And then there's another point, another reason why we are equal. We are equally empty of inherent existence. We are equally empty of inherent existence, which means we are relatively posited. I am I because you are there as you, otherwise I wouldn't be. You are you because I'm here as a reference point to be you. Likewise, there are so many ways by which we are related. Take the case of one person being father, son, brother, husband, teacher, student, on and on and on and on. How we are what we are, based in relation to others. You can't say no. If it weren't for him, even still I would be a teacher. Now you cannot say that, right? If you are a teacher, you're a teacher because there is a school system. You have students. You have recognition as a teacher, etc. If it weren't for them, you can't be what do you call singly outstanding as a teacher, and so goes with so many of our conditions. But then there is a deeper way of looking at it. So we are already making the transition into selflessness, except right here on the point of the equalizing self and others, equalizing and exchanging self and others. So that's the ground on which you develop this sense of equality. And then on top of that, you dwell. So okay, let's first go through the 6 ones. Equality and exchanging self and others. Or one could begin with seeing the downfalls of self-cherishing. And then the third is dwelling on the benefits of cherishing others. Then exchanging self and others. But here you exchange self and others under the force. Yeah, it is logical. Under the force of having seen the advantages of cherishing others and also the disadvantages of cherishing oneself. Cherishing more in the sense of being, of course, the literal translation will be cherishing, but sometimes people may get the sense that, oh, maybe in Buddhism, cherishing self is bad. No, one could be cherishing self, but here, cherishing self at the cost of others, or rather being too obsessively self-absorbent. So that's harmful, and usually our tendency is to be self-observant, to be always self-focused, and then going to be negligent on others. And whereas if we really want to be wise selfish, if we really want to realize our rightful, deep-seated, rightful, justified aspiration for happiness and freedom from suffering, then that's not the way to go about. Rather, one has to cherish others over oneself. So, this is something not that easy to accept, not too easy to agree with. But if we look inside and check with ourselves in the course of our life, every time we find ourselves in terrible situations, more particularly terrible in the sense of mental depression, mental problem, then we can definitely see how, to a great extent, it is rooted in our self-observant attitude. How if we could be a little open and loosen up on self-obsession, how so many of the problems would have been eased. And likewise, this tendency of neglecting others, of even sometimes allowing to take advantage of others, etc., can take the toll on our own joy and happiness. So to begin with, we could be beginning with almost like a selfish tag, even in pursuing this meditation on the disadvantages of selfishness, advantages of whatnot. But eventually one has to kind of immerse into full-flung caring of others. Then one would begin to see the transformative changes and the significant, transformation. One cannot still be clinging on to, yes, this is all coming back to me, the benefit, so I do this. Then I think it would be only selfishness at its hardcore in disguise, and could still be, no matter what label one may give, what others may give the label of, but basically it wouldn't have changed in its hardcore essence. So, so then exchanging in, that's fine. In exchanging self and others, usually we say exchanging in the sense that what we have been cherishing so far, which is self, you replace that with others, and what we have been neglecting others, which is others, you replace that with self. So here, neglecting not in the sense that now you don't at all care about yourself, but when you do that by reason of others. Like because if we want to cherish others and help others, that can only be done when we take even extra better care of ourselves. So that's something, sometimes it's very helpful to remember that, yes, because there can be a lurking, what do you call, still lingering element of what would happen to me if I were to give everything to them? What would happen to me? Who would take care of me? It would be sometimes helpful to give a boost like pat on the side. Oh, don't worry. You can do an even better job if you dedicate it for others. Because be fully dedicated to the well-being of others, that will turn you back into taking care of yourself even better than you might have been doing. Because otherwise it would be mere hypocrisy if you don't take care of yourself and say, I'm going to do everything for others and completely neglect myself. Where in the world can you do this? You cannot. But here you will be taking care of yourself even better than what one might have been doing, but with a qualitative difference of approach, a qualitative difference in attitude, with even much more reason to be surviving, to be living, to be really pushing through. Again, to begin with, one might have to take some help from selfishness here and there, but then eventually let go of that, and then that would be even better off. So is what the scriptures say. Not that I claim I have been through that. But yeah, definitely one can see the point there. So that's exchanging self and others in the general sense, in the usual understanding. But I sometimes, when I read through the 9th chapter, not 9th, 8th chapter of Bodhicitta, I sometimes get even more radical sense of exchanging self and others. Have you noticed that? Yeah, it is much more radical than that. Saying, oh, you exchange in the sense that now you cherish others in place of yourself, then other like what you have been doing, and then you replace oneself with others in kind of neglecting or in kind of taking less care of, as opposed to what you have been doing. But I mean, I have myself gone through the commentary and also of the root text several times. I get a different picture there, very radical way of transformation, where you go into this exercise of really kind of playing a third person, where you look at you, right? Look at you and look at others, and then you really engage in kind of a dialogue, saying who this is, how, etc. It's very. It's very interesting, very interesting. It really seems to really go deep into some kind of a psychology there. So, but the usual general understanding is exchanging in the sense that you exchange the objects of cherishing and neglecting than neglecting than it used to be before, right? So anyway, and then based on that, then you enhance this strength of love and compassion by engaging in the giving and taking. So you kind of go through an image, visualization, and reflective practice of really challenging one's whining, deep-seated whining, self-cherishing down there, and then kind of imagine taking the sufferings of others. You take their sufferings, and at least be very concentrative, concentrative in one's meditation. Take all of their sufferings, weaknesses, hardships, all of them, maybe in the form of clouds, dark clouds or whatnot, or you think that that's what you are bringing in, and then once you bring in, you have some place to dump, right? Where would you dump? Dump it on self-cherishing attitude. Dump it there. Completely bury it. So that's how And then when you give your joy, happiness, resources, you imagine that is being given to others, and then imagine also have, kind of having impact on them in really kind of relieving them of their sufferings, whatnot. It may or may not actually bring about a change, but if you do the practice sincerely, that's a very, very strong practice, bringing real change within oneself. So that's why they are called, what do you call, more enhanced practice of love and compassion through the exercise of giving and taking. And then following that is bodhicitta. Now that the understanding is that the love and compassion would have grown so strongly that it would be desperate in really finding a way by which you could realize the wishes. And that would be then awakening, full awakening. One has to become, because at the present moment, as much as one may be wishing to help others, one is not capable of doing that. So one begins to see where would that capacity lie, or it would lie in someone who has become fully awakened, and thus one develops bodhicitta. So that practice of generating bodhicitta doesn't directly involve taking rebirth or karma across life into consideration. It's just thinking of our connectedness in this life, in whatever relationships we may be, as friends, close ones, neutrals, enemies, strangers, etc., etc. Based on that, you develop a sense of our appreciation of our connectedness, of our indebtedness, and build on that. And then there's this practice of blending the two and making the whole list of stages into some 12, 10, 11, 12 stages. But you get the gist of it, right? Basically, building the strength of love and compassion. But more important is being fully serving others doesn't require completely neglecting or suffering oneself. So I still wonder where the compassion fatigue comes from. It may be compassion in name, but not really doing properly, or maybe identifying compassion with a physical action, not working on the mind there. Very often that's the case, right? You say, "Oh, let's have a compassion week." How? By distributing food to those who don't have, by building houses for those. It's very good, but if it is accompanied by as strong a sense rooted, so strong and rooted sense of love and compassion, then it would be even more sustainable. And there, compassion has to be generated or cultivated on the basis of who the person is, not what that they have done to you. So that's just my thought. So I still am really curious about knowing the scientific research on the compassion fatigue and others. I mean, I want to really see where it's going. Maybe some new aspects of compassion could be unraveled that I may be missing on, but somehow. So the point about really being caring of others doesn't require neglecting. Whereas in the practice, when we say exchanging self and others, means exchanging or replacing others with oneself for caring less, and replacing others with oneself, oneself with others in caring more. It's a matter of where your mind force is directed to. In anything one does, be that taking care of oneself, kind of not out of deceit or deception, but out of sincerity, do that as a means of supporting others, as a means of a medium as a means of being a stronger medium to support others, which is a totally, completely valid reason, valid understanding, valid reason. So, yeah. So, if we can, what do you call, become more convinced, more aware, awakened to this fact of living, I mean, everyone would have been. We will all be much better off, and hardly there will be any case of scarcity, because anyone there will be hardly any case of scarcity. Even if a single person possesses something, it will be equal to everyone possessing it, like that. I don't know if I may be just dreaming or not, but I think that with that kind of a genuine sense of awareness of who we are and what we really require, need, how we could be more wisely spending our limited time, making the most of it. If we could all awaken to this and kind of be supportive of each other, I think with whatever resources, resources we may have, it would be much more sufficient than we would need. I remember the saying of Gandhiji, right? There is enough of what we need, but not enough of what we want. Something like that. I'm paraphrasing. Okay. So I think that should do, right? So basically I've made a point of how to go about generating this expanding of our heart. Okay, so let's, yes. So realizing both of these determinations, the determination to free oneself once forever from the clutches of afflictions, or the determination to be of complete benefit to others by achieving full awakening. For both of these determinations to be realized fully, cultivation of wisdom, of understanding, selflessness is needed. Say, in the case of the first determination, in the case of the first aim of merely achieving freedom from the shackles of afflictions, I'm saying freedom, right? Not just temporary relief from it, but total freedom from the clutches of afflictions. Or for achieving Buddhahood, for both of them, the wisdom of understanding emptiness is indispensable. But in the case of the first, which is the realization, which is realizing the determination to free oneself, which means achieving liberation, achieving freedom from the clutches of afflictions once for all, there one could pursue the understanding in a limited, how do you pronounce it? Succinct. Succinct. Okay. Succinct. Succinct. Succinct way. Whereas in the case of the other, cultivating the wisdom, understanding, selflessness in an elaborate, all-rounded way. So that speaks of the strength of the understanding. What it means by all-rounded way, I have no idea. Well, in the scriptures it says dzogpa. Dzogpa means comprehensively. So much so that just about anything that you look around would be an indication, would be a pointer to things being selfless. One has to work to that level. In terms of potential, it is. The way we are doing, the way I see you doing, it should all be pointed to the fact that this mere dependently, relatedly working with no intrinsic, no roadblock in the form of intrinsic identity ever, anywhere. So it's a matter of working one's way of understanding selflessness to that elaborate level. That is called elaborate, all-rounded way, which is the Bodhisattva's way. Whereas in the case of those pursuing arhatship for oneself, then of course there is no way around the wisdom of understanding selflessness, except it could do with a limited, succinct way. It's kind of, if one understands it on oneself, without having to bother about others, kind of not that one would escape understanding the selflessness of others, except the way of approach could be limited. Could be limited. One could limit it to, say, few reasonings, few approaches to understanding the selflessness of phenomena, selflessness of oneself. Of course, in terms of understanding it, once you understand the selflessness of one thing, then it will open up to understanding the selflessness of everything. So it's not so the elaborate, limited is not in the sense of how many things on which you understand selflessness, but in how elaborate, rich, comprehensive, all-rounded way you understand it. So how rich you are in approaching the selflessness of a thing. So that kind of accounts for the strength of it, so that the impact of that can go deeper into working or addressing the subtle stains or subtle instincts of the self-grasping. Before this wisdom of selflessness, now we are using the term wisdom selflessness, emptiness, right? We have to figure that out very clearly. But for now, I'm using the term selflessness, which means understanding emptiness. Why we're calling that selflessness is understanding emptiness has to do with seeing the absence or the lack of an inherent selfhood. Selfhood in the sense of identity. So here we are talking of selfhood on everything. Like everything has a selfhood, identity of it, except those identity are contingent on so many other things, rather than being in existence in and of itself. So what does that mean? It is not that easy, or we may not agree at all. I'm worried. So without that, the reason why we came through the first two stages and leading up to this is, yes, no matter how strong an aspiration we may have, and how much we may have worked our way in as we might say, collecting other merits, and even generating wisdom into the subtle, impermanent nature of things, into the subtle, dissatisfactory nature of things, etc. But so long as one has fallen short of understanding the selflessness of things, that too, in its very subtle, ultimate level, then no matter how much effort one may have made and how much benefits one may be gaining from that, which one would definitely, but it would all fall short of actually realizing either total freedom or full awakening. So that's the whole idea. That's because without the strength of this wisdom, all of the practices that we may gain, would deal with secondary obstacles to the to the uh, to the goals, and uh, fall short of what you call acting on the ultimate or the most in the ultimate obstacles in the form of the self-grasping. Although we use the term self-grasping, but it could mean so many different things. Here, grasping at an inherent existence, right? Because we use the term grasping for clinging and others also. So it is, yeah. Right now, the words, terms used is messy and messy. So yeah, it could be cleared up only when we have, since it's an English language, only when we have foreign Western yogis who realize the Dharma, cut through the language and then realize them, embody them, and then breathe fresh air into how you convey it. Then that could really be revolutionary. Until then, I really see so many language barriers and language limitations in conveying it. Anyway, so without that, what would happen is, next, please. Yes. Without that, one could still be able to fly far, but still be tied to the ground. And I'm using this this picture here, not just on my own. I saw the reference in Tsongkhapa's commentary on the fundamental treatise, where he says that otherwise, then it would be like a bird with its limbs tied to a very, 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 seemingly very, very long rope, but nonetheless tied to a rope which is tied to a peg on the ground, that there would always be a limit to completely freeing itself. Yeah, so first we talk about what would happen without that, and then we would talk about what it is. We will see whether we would agree or not. I see. Yes. Okay. Okay. So yes, could we go to the next one? Yes. So basically, the idea is that whatever efforts we may have made in terms of genuine aspiration, morality practice, concentration practice, other wisdoms, seeing impermanent nature of things, etc., and thus be reaping the benefits from them. But so long as we still fall short of nudging and kind of jolting the stronghold of self-grasping within us, the reality of total freedom would still remain a dream. Total freedom from the clutches of afflictions or full awakening would still remain a dream. Because living, it's like we still would be maintaining or keeping intact our self-grasping. Now here, grasping not in the sense of attachment, but grasping in the sense of still grasping at an inherent existence on the basis of which we could be loving ourselves, others, or not. So it doesn't necessarily be attachment, but somehow, and whatever attitudes we may develop, or we may develop consciously, or we may naturally be drawn into, but so long as it is anchored on the self and the self-grasping, anchored on a concept notion of inherent existence. So long as that remains the case, then sooner or later, one way or the other, afflictions, no matter how they may have seemed to have been subsided and dealt with, would still poke its head. You have this game called Whack-a-mole. Yes, thank you. Whack-a-mole. Yeah, whack-a-mole is where you hit on something popping up, and then you hit on it will go down, but then it will still again pop up later on. You keep on hitting. It won't never stop being. See, now it worked with magic, right? I was really going to the pain in explaining it, but whack-a-mole did the whole whack. So otherwise it would be like a whack-a-mole, playing whack-a-mole. At least with our afflictions, because the root would not have been taken out. It's just a matter of meeting the condition. It will still pop up. Despite things like, oh, there has been drought and there has been no plants, maybe the seeds have already gone. The next time the rain comes, sprouts come out. Right? So that will be the same thing. See, whack-a-mole really did the magic. Okay. So yeah. And that the reason is because the relationship between afflicted emotions and self-grasping is explained, is like that of the relationship between rest of the senses on one hand, and the tactile sense, the body sense. I sense. I don't know whether I should say I sense. I sense faculty. Yeah, maybe sense faculty will be good. I sense faculty. Nose sense faculty. Air, tongue sense faculty. Those are the four. And then the last one is can we say body sense faculty? But that's the one which has tactile, which has the tactile. So the tactile, I checked with scientists, but maybe it may or may not be right. But I checked with scientists, and they say that eye sense organ also has tactile sensation, right? And so does all the rest. Like I sense, of course, there would have to be. If you touch, it would have to have a sense, right? Whereas when you touch anywhere else in the body will not see things, right? It will not smell things, right? Smell, it will do, only those will do their own individual work. But at the same time, they all have the tactile sensation. Like tactile sensation pervades all of them. So the tactile sensation is like the self-grasping attitude. And all the rest of the afflictions are like the remaining of the sense faculties. I looked up into the Google and I found this picture. I just could not believe somebody has been so kind in posting it. I even have reason to be compassionate, appreciating, indebted to whoever may have posted it on Google. So the reason why we would be otherwise just playing whack-a-mole would be because of this relationship. Now we have to check whether this is the case or not. Does every affliction necessarily has to have a self-grasping base or not? The reason is every affliction, irrespective of the degrees they may vary, would always have an element of exaggeration. That is the point here. Of course, exaggeration to the point of seeing whatever object as being inherently existent, But at the same time, by way of doing that, having blown up on, so whatever pleasant object there may be, you would be blowing up on its pleasantness, beyond what it may be, rooted in its being seen as inherently existent. Like if you are looking at something as disgusting, one would have blown up on the disgusting nature of it, rooted in its seeing, rooted or grounded in seeing its being inherently existently disgusting, yet at the same time, by way of doing that, one would have blown up on the nature of discussion also, beyond what it may be in reality. So that is the reason that no matter how hard it may be, given the opportunity, we should be working our way to really wondering about what this selflessness is, and kind of what do you call? Making effort in understanding it. So, having spoken about the connection between the two, now we'll take a while here in wondering what does it mean. It's like a summary here. Then we'll dwell on it. So yes, let's look at it. Arriving at an understanding about the mode of existence of all phenomena as free from the true extremes of existence and non-existence. This may be a little misleading. I don't remember having pointed this out in the first 2 years. Here, basically one is pursuing a philosophical understanding. A philosophical understanding attuning to how things exist, the mode of existence of things. And the correct way of understanding would be to steer clear of two possible extremes. One is called the extreme of existence, other is called the extreme of non-existence. But what is misleading about this, maybe that people may understand that, maybe the middle way will be understanding things to be neither existing nor not existing. That is wrong. That is not what I'm intending here. You got that right? You got the point. By calling one extreme as existence, the one extreme will be seeing things as inherently existing. The other extreme would be the other extreme, which would be not existing at all. So the balance will be seeing existing things as existing, but not inherently. I think the same problem would be there if I were relating this in Tibetan also. We call the extremes yatha, metta, but have to be sorted out in this proper way. So what I meant is the middle way will be to see the middle way, the middle perspective will be to see neither as existing nor as non-existent. That is not intended here. As philosophical and sophisticated it may sound, and in many of the texts it say, it is not. It's like, this is getting really, really sophisticated and philosophical. But this is not intended here. So the extremes here, free from which the middle way understanding is sought, the extremes here will be, by existence, it will be the extreme of inherent existence. And then, by the way, we can relate to this. If anything were to exist inherently, of course, again we have to understand inherent existence in context. Even in conventional world, we can speak of things being inherently something, inherently not. There's nothing wrong with the term inherent. It's not that now from this time onward we shun the term inherent out of the dictionary. So now later on we will unpack this. What inherent existence being talked about as the object of negation amounts to. So in a way, if something were to exist inherently, then that would be an extreme way of existing. If something were to not exist, although if anything existing were to not exist at all, that would be another extreme. So the outlook being pursued here is something that steers clear of the two. So it is very clear that pursuing an understanding of emptiness or selflessness should not land us to seeing things to be not existing, because that would be falling into one extreme. And nor should it nor should it still make us stay with seeing them as inherently existence, because that would be another extreme. So the middle way will be seeing existing things as being existing, but doing so non-inherently, which means dependently, relatedly. Although dependent related existence would have to be fine-tuned to fit with this understanding of emptiness, because there can be so many layers of dependent origination. So, in other words, the next will be seeing emptiness as reinforcing dependent origination, seeing dependent origination as reinforcing emptiness. So it should not at all negate object dependent origination. If at all anything, it reaffirms, reinforces. So in a way we can say the other side of the coin, the flip side of the coin, yes, the flip side of the coin of emptiness is dependent origination. Although still that is not enough fine-tuned. Dependent origination is a broad spectrum. There can be degrees of subtlety. So in a way, to be able to see the two to be compatible, not just compatible, but even reinforcing each other, to the point that none of them would be possible without the other. In a way, in reality, they are intertwined, except we don't see them to be intertwined. In reality, they are blended, inextricably blended, but somehow we don't see them in that light. We rather we can kind of single out the conventional reality of things, completely misconstruing the other aspect of their existence of emptiness. And even in the case of dependent origination, we do not see the full spectrum of it, just a little bit. Yes, let's move to the next one. So these are these are kind of approaching it from different aspects, kind of looking at it from different aspects, all coming down to the same thing, the Madhyamaka view, the Madhyamaka outlook. What kind of an outlook, what kind of a perspective are we pursuing here, which would be called the understanding of emptiness, which then have to be deepened and integrated to the point of now summoning the strength to strike at innate self-grasping instincts within us. So the third, I say, succeeding in exhaustively refuting any intrinsic nature while comfortably upholding all conventional realities. The strength in this, the emphasis in this qualification is the quality, the qualifying word, exhaustively. Exhaustively in the sense that you leave not an iota of any level or any kind of objectivity or intrinsicality. Not an iota of intrinsicality, not an iota of objectivity, which means totally 100% leaving it to mere. That's the reason why it is called mere dependently related. Mere in the sense that only dependently related, not a single iota of any degree of intrinsicality, any degree of objectivity. Although I use the term objectivity here, this is not so clear. it is not completely ruling out anything objectivity, but here objective objective in the sense of objective in the sense of alluding to any amount of intrinsicality, in any amount of inherent existence. Although we could say any amount of true existence, but that's also very, very misleading. When we say nothing is truly existing, it's almost equal to saying nothing is existing. Unless we understand what we mean by truly existent. You say, if it is not truly existent, that means it is not existing, right? Truly it is not existing. So that means it's not existing. So the terms can be very, very misleading. One has to really break through them.